So Israel is now doing what I hoped they wouldn't do. And if they do plan to do this, it's really important that Kamala Harris is in office, because if Trump gets in, this might actually happen. And this might also be the reason why Netanyahu's holding out for so long, because he's probably hoping to God that Trump wins. But here's what some people in the Knesset and some radical Israelis are planning to do with Gaza. They're planning to try to settle the land, and they're actively trying to move in as civilians are caught in the crossfire of a war. Seriously, this is happening. They cannot be allowed to do this. There's no way that anyone who's pro-Israel or Netanyahu or anyone else can argue in good faith that they want peace if they're going to literally try to colonize Gaza. You cannot realistically sit here and say you want peace or a two-state solution if this is the next step. I'm not saying that Netanyahu or his people actually want a two-state solution. But if you're one of those people who's pro-Israel and you claim you want a two-state solution, this cannot be allowed to happen. Let's get into the article. As Gaza burns, Israeli settlers make real estate plans. Sounds like I guess Jared Kushner was not joking when he said that was the next move. Cheered on by influential members of Netanyahu's far-right coalition, Israel's emboldened settler movement argues that Palestinians should leave the enclave. Insane. So, the U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken flew into Israel on Tuesday, pressing for a ceasefire in Gaza following the killing of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. But a ceasefire was the last thing on the mind of Knesset members, government ministers, and hundreds of Israeli settlers who convened a day earlier to plan the future of the enclave. These plans did not include any kind of negotiation. There was one subject under discussion at the conference, timed to coincide with the annual Sukkot religious holiday, which marks the exodus of Jews from Egypt: Israel's settlement of Gaza. The event, organized by the settler organization Nahala, was held just 3 kilometers from the Gaza frontier. Frontier is an odd word to use. Significantly, it was in a closed military zone, and this conference was held under army protection. The regular thud of outgoing artillery fire interrupted speeches and was greeted by applause and cries of "God bless our brave soldiers." Many of the men present carried machine guns or pistols. "In the event of a terrorist infiltration," boomed the PA announcer, "we ask you please not to fire your weapon. Let the security handle it. This is for everyone's safety." Now, I understand that most Israelis serve in the IDF, but as your actual fellow countrymen are actually in the trenches getting shot at by Hamas, as civilians get caught up in the crossfire, you're applauding. One thing I've learned from this conflict is that despite the fact that these people understand the situation in a way that I will never understand because I'm not from there and I've never lived there, they're simultaneously so delusional you would think they're not in the conflict. You would think the insanity, and I know people go, both sides. Yes, both sides. The insanity and the irrationality I've seen from both sides can only be brought about by the utmost amount of hatred. It's crazy. Those present at the conference included supporters from the United States, South Africa, and Australia. One great-grandmother from Melbourne wore a sticker saying in Hebrew that Gaza is part of Israel, and on the other, Kahane was, I don't even know what this means. I don't even want to repeat it because it's probably some genocidal shit. A number of those at the conference carried stickers celebrating Meir Kahane, the late-born American rabbi and convicted terrorist who abdicated that Palestinians should be forced out of Israel. I'm assuming he's talking about the Palestinian Israelis who peacefully live in Israel, who aren't doing anything at all, as far as I know. Nahala leader Daniela Weiss, one of the heroes of the conference, boasted that the families were ready to move to the edge of the Gaza border, claiming that Nahala had already entered a deal worth millions of dollars for temporary housing units as a preliminary to the settlement of the Strip. These people do realize they're probably just going to get moved back, even if they get the settlements. They're probably just going to be forced to move back anyways. The amount of money you have to pull some shit like this, you're probably going to get sent back in 15 years. She predicted you will witness how Jews go to Gaza and Arabs disappear from... bro, insanity. Gaza seafront a bargain. The millions of dollars worth of temporary housing units would be an excellent business for Or Yamtovian, an activist for Israeli Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir's far-right Jewish power party. You know what's funny, though, is even Ben-Gvir, I believe, who was like the security minister or whatever, even he has said Hamas is no longer operational. Like, they can fight, but they're not, like, at the level to where, like, they can't wage war effectively anymore. They can fight in, like, small little groups, but they're no longer, like, operational effective. Even he has said that there probably should be a ceasefire in exchange for hostages. So when the guy who's literally in charge of your military directly is saying, yeah, like, Hamas is no longer operational, we're at a point where we probably have enough leverage to make, like, a deal. Not that Hamas has ever offered a good faith deal, but at least he's saying, hey, we could try to get a ceasefire in exchange for a hostage exchange. Like, Hamas is no longer operational. If he's saying that the war is basically in its, like, ending stages, it's interesting that Netanyahu's kind of holding out. Yam Tovian is in the property business. Speaking outside the Jewish Power Sukkot tent, he told MEE that settling Gaza would be a good solution for the real estate problem. We are a small country, and there's big land here we can use. Asked when Gaza could be occupied, he replied, first things first, as soon as possible. Asked by MEE how much seafront property in Gaza might be worth, he replied, it will be a bargain. Properties in Tel Aviv next to the sea cost 20 to 50 million shekels. Here we can sell cheap. Tovian said he was the 16th on Jewish Power's parliamentary candidates list and predicted that its leader Ben-Gvir would be Israel's next prime minister after Netanyahu. It would be a serious error to dismiss the conference as a fringe event reflecting the wild fantasies of Israel's settler movement. Big money and top politicians have a stake in the future of Gaza. The event was attended by senior government ministers and Knesset members, including several from Netanyahu's Likud party. Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, who is in charge of civil, Middle Eastern names, both Arab and Israel, what the, you niggas, oh my God, bro. Tired of reading y'all's, I'm not reading y'all's names no more. Okay, maybe Ben. That's an easy one. Ben-Gvir was the start of the show, joining in communal dancing and hailed by many others present as the next prime minister. Ben-Gvir maintained that Hamas led attacks in southern Israel on October 7th last year, in which about 1,200 Israelis were killed and hundreds more taken hostage, had changed the mindset of Israelis. We are the owners of this land. They understand that when Israel acts like the rightful owners of this land, that is what brings results. He told his audience that Israel would encourage what he called the voluntary transfer of all Gazan citizens. We cannot allow this to happen. Adding, we will offer them the opportunity to move to other countries because that land belongs to us. They're like, you could, like, okay, this is crazy. But he could at least be like, look, at this point, it looks like we're never going to be able to live side by side. It looks like we're both just going to be killing each other forever. There are plenty of other Arab states in the region that you can just move to because us killing each other indefinitely just isn't worth it. Not even that. He just like, it just belongs to us. Like, for those of you who sit there and are saying, we're going to punish Kamala Harris, we're not going to vote for her, we're going to make sure she feels the sting of our anger about what's happening in Gaza, these people are holding out for a hopeful Trump victory. They know that if Biden's successor, Kamala Harris, enters office, they're going to be pressured to not do this. They're praying to God that Donald Trump wins because this is the next step. And a lot of y'all don't want to hear this. You want to have a movie conversation, an anime conversation about colonizer, colonized, resistance, like we have to actually talk brass tacks politics right now. I think we can all agree, regardless of where you sit, whether you think it's a genocide or not in Gaza, whether you believe some of you are insane enough to think October 7th was justified, whatever the case might be, this cannot be allowed to happen. Like, this is untenable. Like, the idea that Israel can just set up shop in Gaza, carte blanche, because of October 7th is not acceptable. What I've been thinking of, and a lot of people aren't going to like this, but I've been thinking of an actual occupation with international oversight in which Gaza is rebuilt with international aid. It's rebuilt. Hamas is stamped out by an occupying force, more than likely the IDF. But even then, I don't know how realistic that is, because Netanyahu's government really doesn't even want to do that. They don't want to do that. They just want to just like move them out of the land. An actual two-state solution is going to involve some things we don't like, such as military occupations. But it has to be good faith with international oversight. And that's the only way I could actually see a two-state solution being brought about. One state's never going to happen. Two-state can only happen with Hamas out of the picture, because Hamas doesn't want a two-state or one-state solution. They want all the Jews dead. That's never going to happen. Hezbollah and the Houthis also believe the same shit. They also probably cannot bring about the two-state solution. If this happens, which it probably will happen under Trump, any hope for a two-state solution is over with. I don't think Israel has any intention of getting rid of the settlements in the West Bank right now, or maybe even ever. And now the Likud is actually like planning to just like colonize Gaza. Unfortunately, I don't think Netanyahu even pretends to want a two-state solution. I don't think he even pretends to want peace. Israel cannot be allowed to do this. I believe Israel reserves the right to defend itself. However, this is not even self-defense. This is what we call colonization. This cannot be allowed to happen. It's already happening in the West Bank. And to be fair, if Palestinians in the West Bank wanted to fight back and attack Israeli military outposts in the West Bank and take over settlements, not wiping out whole families, but taking over settlements, that would be reasonable. Like, hey, look, you're colonizing us. We will fight back. We will use military force. And if you want it to stop, let's come to a reasonable agreement in which two states exist, in which we acknowledge one another's right to exist. But unfortunately, that's like a damn near a fucking fantasy. Like, when Hamas conducts operations, they go for as many civilian casualties as possible. They don't want a two-state solution. And it seems like the Likud doesn't either. Like, this is like the worst, like, this is really the worst timeline. Like, bro, this is actually, like, from everything from the election to Israel-Palestine, from Ukraine, this is actually really bad. Like, oh my goodness, bro. Like, this is basically like, I'm reading lunacy. I'm reading lunacy. Like when actual members of the government of Israel are attending an insane like meeting like this, you begin to realize how important it is that Kamala Harris wins this one. You know? Here's a good part of this article. Nahala leader Daniela Weiss alluded to this new settler power when she referenced Netanyahu's statement earlier this year that the idea of Gaza settlement was unrealistic. She pointed out that many had made the same observation of the West Bank, which is today overrun by Israeli settlers. Like, don't think for 1 second this won't happen. Like, this very well can happen. Because, like, the reality is, I know people don't want to hear this, but the alliance of Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and Iran is worthless international. Like, no one wants it. No one likes it besides like Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and Iran themselves, and like far left like radicals in the West. The international community does not like these people. They're terror organizations with unreasonable demands for peace. They don't want a two-state solution. They engage in attacks even when they get concessions from Israel. Like, when Israel leaves Gaza, they immediately fire rockets. Like, if you wanted the occupation to end, and then when it ends you fire rockets, you're delusional. The reality is, Israel's far more reasonable to interact with and deal with for the international community, and they're much more likely to pick Israel over Gaza and the West Bank. It's fucked up, but it's true. The surrounding Arab states have basically completely just given up on the entire situation, and the only remaining allies are literal terror organizations that nudge gay people off buildings occasionally. With that level of international support, which is basically none at all, this could actually happen without Kamala Harris in office possibly being able to pressure Israel. That's literally our last hope. That's our only hope at this point. Literally. Like, that's it. Because Israel at this point, any attacks after would have to be expected. Like, you just have to expect it. It's like you're literally setting up shop now. Like at this point, you're actually legitimizing Hamas. You're legitimizing the radical ideology of Gazans. I don't know, like, you know, I don't know what is going on, but what I do know is that if Donald Trump wins the election, he's 100% going to co-sign on this. And given Jared Kushner's language concerning this issue, this is probably, well, not even probably, it's obviously something that's been in the talks for a long time, and Jared Kushner's obviously gotten wind of it. This, at this point, if Israel does this, like, there's literally nothing anybody can say. Like, it's like, at this point, it's like, if you get attacked, I'm not saying an attack like October 7th is ever justified, but if Palestinians, like, attack mostly military outposts and civilians get caught in the crossfire, not actually targeted, what the fuck you want us to say? Like, like, you know what I mean? Even if that happened in the West Bank, I can't say anything. Like, you know what you're doing. You're colonizing them. If they were to, if tomorrow, like, Hamas in the West Bank attacked mostly like military installations and, civilian casualties were kept at a minimum, what the fuck do you want like people to say? Like, my God, bro. Like, worst timeline, literally worst timeline. Like, at this point, like, this is the worst timeline. If you like the video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. This is like, we're spiraling. We're literally spiraling right now.